China is about to steal the gaming industry, like everything else that has not been nailed down. And even when it's nailed down, they still try to steal it anyway.
From indie to AAA, China is set to clone the entire gaming industry. Everyone clones and copies a bit, but while the West does it quietly, China does it strategically to dominate the global gaming world. But cloning your way to power comes at a cost. I'll uncover their three-part cloning strategy, why they clone instead of create, and their unspoken tactic that might be their real key to global dominance.
China has an absolute huge problem with ineptitude in the highest ranks of society, politics, private industry, private sectors, law enforcement, and everything. Because typically the people who are in power in China are corrupt. And AK, well, they pretty much always choose to hire someone who they know, who they can trust, or who is just gonna pay them a small fee every month because they got hired in the first place. That's how China does things. That's why China cannot create. There have been instances where China actually does some kind of technological big thing. But considering how much China is actually putting in real money in trying to be the best in the world and, you know, breakthrough technologies and whatnot, they have a huge problem. They have a huge problem because it's not paying off enough. Or at all, honestly, considering how much they are stealing. Every time, for example, China says that it has some kind of innovation in, I don't know, vehicles or whatever, it's literally stolen from someone else. It is literally stolen from someone else, typically. And all the propaganda, by the way, is also insane. Recently, the most recent big propaganda about China, I actually even heard it about on Joe Rogan, was, oh, look at China. They made this magnetic suspense that, you know, you barely feel a bump when you're driving. China didn't invent that. That is a very old thing. That's like 30 years old or something like that. And it was not invented in China. China's now just doing this as propaganda. That's literally how it works.
Remember the buzz around Powerworld for ripping off Pokemon? Well, now Tencent, China's gaming giant, is openly cloning it to incubate their next big hit. And Powerworld's maker calls this amazing times. So while the West cries rip-off, in China, it's just another day at the office, and I'll show you how they do it. But first, when I think of China, I think of...
Seriously, Jackie Chan?
Sorry.
Wait, no. Is that a young Jack? Yeah, that's a young Jackie Chan, I think.
I just couldn't do a video about China and not mention my boy Jackie Chan, who, by the way, was the face of the Learning Machine, the top Nintendo clone back when importing consoles was way too expensive. And Jackie came with a keyboard to not only play, but learn through games like Letters Invaders. Now, I'm bringing this up because the company behind the Learning Machine recently went bankrupt, thanks to China's chaotic laws. And to understand their game making, let's first understand their lawmaking, which in China can change overnight. You see, games must be government approved to make sure they're cultural fit. From detailed game
Everything must be government approved to be a cultural fit. Not just games, literally anything.
descriptions to source codes, the government checks everything, since games are dubbed opium of the mind. But when a regulatory shift kicked in, the government froze all game approvals for an entire year. Big games were blocked from making sales, causing huge financial losses and many new rules. Real ID registration, facial scans, and limited gaming hours for kids.
我9点就睡了呀，我还得玩到半夜。你说我玩过半夜吗？
The first freeze ended, but a second
Aw, poor kid. She probably already has terminal cancer from eating all the fake food and gutter oil. Sad.
我玩过半夜吗？
The first freeze ended, but a second freeze dropped the number of
Also, what the hell is with this video? What is this? How and why, YouTube? This is stupid.
approvals even more. Today, game approvals continue, albeit very slowly. And to top it off, China had a 15-year-long ban on gaming consoles to crack down on gaming. But when the economy struggled, they lifted the ban to cash in on the gaming industry. Suddenly, China was ready for the Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox, which meant the end for many local.
Jesus, look at this! Is this a... There's no way this is real. There's no way this is not some kind of meme post.
Phone makers. And so, keyboard Jackie disappeared, and with it, the childhood memories of many Chinese. This nutshell version shows China's unpredictable lawmaking. But there's way more than just red tape. So to grasp their cloning strategy, we need to rewind a bit further. And I'll make it quick. So let's start here, with Mao's death. That's when China flipped from ideology to economy, sparking the chaotic period of gaming, unregulated, free-for-all, and flooded with unlicensed copies. The first Chinese PC game was pretty much a Monopoly knockoff.
Oh, by the way, I'll just answer the stupid question why China can get away with anything. Blatant rip-offs, and all of that stuff in any industry. Because you can't sue China. Technically you can, but China doesn't have to do anything. They have been already sued by huge multi-billion-dollar brands. And guess what? Nothing happens. Because China doesn't care about you and your rules.
A year later, China's first RPG entered the scene. In the formation period, regulations popped up but didn't keep players from cloning. Shanda's The World of Legend cloned a Korean game, and Tencent's first game portal looked strikingly similar to another. But why did China, once famous for its world-changing innovations, become infamous for its imitations? Well, it boils down to their view of knowledge. You see, knowledge is seen as public good and trumps personal ideas. As a Chinese official once wrote, Chinese learn for substance, Westerners for application. In other words, use foreign knowledge to boost national power, whether it's military equipment or architecture. That's why a Chinese developer replicated Zaha Hadid's design before her project was even complete. When called out, he claimed, "I never meant to copy, just to surpass." And here, dear viewers, lies the stark contrast. As a Chinese journalist notes, Americans have hope, while we have targets. But it's not just about targets. In China, it's about reaching them fast.
And cutting all the corners. If you do not know what tofu dreg is, by the way, Google it. It's an absolute joy and pleasure. It's about all of the skyscrapers, buildings, sinkholes, and all of the stuff that are currently happening in China, because they have been cutting costs on absolutely everything for decades now. Literally a couple of decades now. There are literally new apartment buildings that are made, and people go into them, and they scrape the wall, and it's just like sand. It just comes apart all like sand. It is crazy. Again, China has a huge problem with cancer. I have said this multiple times. There are currently rural villages in China that have 100% cancer rate. Literally, hundreds of people all have cancer because of wastewater going in the wrong places, pollution, chemical plants, fake food, gutter oil, and all of the things. I have made the prediction that China's going to have a serious problem, that they are going to completely destroy their genetics, because all of this goes to genetics. Gutter oil is going to destroy China in a couple of generations when the genetics are just completely twisted, because all of this actually works on DNA and whatnot. It impacts it. In 20, 30 years, China could potentially have an astonishingly high percent of birth defects. Literal monsters being born at this rate. Because it's not stopping. It is not stopping. The fake food industry, all of that jazz, it's just growing bigger.
Many of you nailed it in my community post. China clones for fast market capture. It's more complex than this, but whether it's quickly capturing a market, cultural influence, or lax legalities, speed is key. And that's why during the development period, China's gaming industry exploded. Online gaming, loot boxes, and microtransactions became the new gold rush, with giants launching games even on entirely homegrown 3D engines. In the expansion period, China became the largest gaming population in the world, and today, in the maturing period, the largest gaming market in the world. With Chinese gaming giants topping the revenue charts, it rightfully earned the title Games Industry Capital of the World. Now, before I show their cloning strategy, I want to get things straight. Who does not clone? East or West, we all do it. Games have always been copied. When Doom set the template for FPS, most FPS games were dubbed Doom clones. Same with Diablo clones. Candy Crush ripped off.
I mean, it's completely true. You know it, but China does this. They don't even try to innovate. It's literally a clone in the most direct sense.
Bejeweled, which ripped off Diamond Mine. Paladin mirrored Overwatch. Saints Row GTA, and PUBG walked so Fortnite could run. I mean, that's how genres are born. However, there's a thin line between enhancing a concept and outright theft. America's most notorious clone company is probably Zynga. A while back, EA sued them over the Ville for ripping off The Sims Social. As soon as EA released Restaurant City, Zynga released Cafe World with striking resemblance. The fun part? Farmville, the game that put Zynga on the map, that too is just a rehash of Chinese.
Dude, Farmville was insane because this was one of the absolute first games to actually strike an adult audience who previously had nothing to do with gaming. I remember this when I was 15 or whatever. Maybe slightly older or younger, it doesn't really matter. But, you know, my dad's sister played it, her husband played it. A lot of people who literally never cared about gaming, never even really did gaming or anything like that, played this on social media accounts.
Game Happy Farm, which itself is a rehash of Japan's Harvest Moon. Or check out Deviator from a Chinese studio. From UI to mechanics, Deviator doesn't seem to deviate too far from its inspiration. And then there's Piano Tiles. No, I have not sped up the video, but this Chinese hit game spawned so many knockoffs, this lady didn't need long to prove her point.
Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be tier listing a bunch of Piano Tiles ripoffs. Alright, so I went to the App Store and searched up Piano Tiles and downloaded as many as I could find. And then I realized that the list would pretty much never end, there's way too many, and I think this one page, 30 of them, is enough.
You see, we all do it to some extent. But while the West does it subtly, China does it aggressively for 3 reasons. Number 1, pressure. In a blog titled, How I Put Together a Game Map That You'll Despise, a Chinese designer shows how to clone a game map quickly, saying, plagiarizing is an art in itself. If you think I shouldn't be a designer, then sorry, but I'll continue to be one to make a living. Yes, in China, studios push for super.
That is the perfect way to describe the Chinese mentality, by the way, in general. It doesn't matter who I hurt. It doesn't matter if it's illegal. It doesn't matter if it's dodgy. It doesn't matter if this ruins things. I will do it because I care only about myself. Yeah, you probably have heard this Chinese thing, communism people, but the people are not for the people. The people obviously care about their communities and groups to an extent. But pretty much at all opportunities, it's like, well, if this benefits me and harms others, good. Not a problem, because I benefit at the end.
Super fast turnarounds, no time for innovating. And meanwhile, Western studios, they take their sweet, sweet time. But doesn't China have copyright laws?
No.
Well, which brings us to the second reason.
Well, yes, for themselves, no for others.
Lacks copyright laws. Many think China lacks them, but they have them, very similar to the US. They just aren't enforced as strictly. Look at this. Game mechanics and ideas, not protected in either country. Art and graphics, protected in both, barely enforced in China. Story and text.
Well, if you think mechanics and ideas should be actually protected, that would probably ruin the game industry.
Enforced in the US, lose in China. Same with sound and music. So why work on new ideas if anyone can just copy them faster than you can say copyright infringement? Blizzard's Hearthstone, for example, was cloned within a few months of its release.
Nice.
Sleeping Dragon doesn't just look similar, it looks and sounds identical. Blizzard sued them and walked away with $2 million. Or take Honor of Kings, China's top
I'm surprised they even walked away with something.
mobile game. Its maker Tencent faces numerous lawsuits, especially with this one, which cloned almost everything from game design to character
Mobile Legends makes so much money, it doesn't matter. It makes more than League of Legends, I think.
and even marketing tactics. Marketing tactics? Can they even be protected?
No,
I don't know. But check this
not at all. I think marketing in general can probably not be protected unless you do it one for one, even outside of China.
out. NetEase, Blizzard's Chinese partner, sued for an Overwatch clone and walked away with $500,000. But only
Dude, I think the only reason they even got money here is because, you know, NetEase is heavily overviewed by Chinese authorities, and, you know, they probably like World of Warcraft there, and that's the only reason they even got anything. In typical fashion, China doesn't even respond when someone gets sued, because they have no obligation.
to be sued by PUBG Corp, as NetEase created two mobile games very similar to PUBG on PC.
PUBG, Knives Out. PUBG, Rules of Survival. PUBG, Cyber Hunter.
So if everyone clones and sues everyone, why can't Western studios do the same? Forget about it. Just forget about it. Which leads to the third reason, legal inaction. It's nearly impossible for foreign studios to enforce their rights in China.
Yep.
The legal system often favors local firms anyways, and even if you win, it might not even be worth the cost. When Tekken's 3 training mode was patented worldwide, including China, it didn't take long for a Chinese fighting game to ignore the patent and feature a strikingly similar mode. Enforcements in China are hit or miss, but their 3-part cloning strategy isn't. Because if they're good at something, it's at monitoring. In the monitoring stage, it's all about observing global gaming trends and adapting them to China's strict regulations. You see, many foreign games in China are banned because
I don't think this is even a big deal that they're good at that. I mean, everyone's good at that.
they don't pass the cultural test. Blood, nudity, extreme violence, all a no-go. Sleeping Dogs, for instance, didn't pass the test because it took place in Hong Kong. Shenmue 3 also didn't because it showed real-life Chinese locations. Hoppu Games showed a red effect around the icons, which is the color of blood.
Yeah,
And
that's
Pokemon
bad.
Go didn't pass because Google Maps is banned. But Let's Hunt Monsters filled the gap quite nicely. Now here's where it gets interesting. How do you identify breakout genres? Well, according to their strategy, genres tend to emerge.
No, they can just use Google Trends. They literally can just Google Trends, use Google Trends and see how big something is. It's really not complicated.
Every 6 years, from FPS to MMORPGs to MOBA and Battle Royale. And by tracking Steam tags, they can monitor genres with global breakout potential to ensure they are at the forefront. Which leads us to stage 2, cloning. Once they spot a breakout genre, they quickly clone and test them. In case of a small hit, they double down through strategic partnerships. When MOBA and Battle Royale emerged, notice how Tencent acquired Riot Games and secured PUBG mobile rights. They then rolled out Honor of Kings, which is basically League of Legends, and tailored it for Chinese players on mobile. And when NetEase released mega-hit game Eggy Party, a Fall Guys clone, Tencent redirected hundreds of devs from working on Assassin's Creed Jade to their own party game, Dreamstar. No wonder Assassin's Creed Jade is delayed to 2025, because the party game genre has priority. But cloning isn't just about mimicking game mechanics. You gotta clone the smart way to gel with the Chinese culture. And that's why a direct clone of PUBG was not successful. Tencent had to rebrand it as Game for Peace, a patriotic, non-violent version to comply with Chinese regulations. Players
Still
wave
worked.
goodbye instead of dying, and they emit light instead of blood. As the designer lady said, cloning is an art in itself, which brings us to the next stage, scaling. Once a cloned game becomes a small hit, the real magic happens, scaling. Put it on mobile, PC, and make it free to play. But not just that, you gotta boost the marketing too. Let's go back to Honor of Kings. Once cloned and culturally adapted, it became the *1 game. And so Tencent threw everything at it. Massive ad campaigns, celebrity endorsements, collaborations
Oh, celebrity endorsements in China are big.
with beauty brands to bring in female gamers. Or take Genshin Impact. They didn't just collaborate, they Genshified entire KFCs to reel in mostly male gamers.
All dudes. I'm pretty sure this is like 100% all dudes.
And once it's on every
Obviously.
platform and the marketing is rolling, they try to push it globally. But what's working in China doesn't necessarily work abroad. Take Arena of Valor, for instance. It's the Western version of Honor of Kings and flopped internationally for 2 reasons. First, it launched just as the Battle Royale craze took off with Fortnite. Second, it's a game lost in translation. Honor of Kings hooks players with its rich Chinese cultural context, covering historic heroes to iconic poets. But when Arena of Valor tried swapping in Norse, Greek, and Roman figures, it just didn't click the same way. There just is no
Wait, what? Batman? Former. Batman, the Joker, Peora. Peora, I think it's supposed to be pronounced. Not sure. In any case, that is hilarious.
It just didn't click the same way. There just is no
Batman.
shared cultural literacy. And honestly, I'm not sure if throwing Batman or the Joker into the mix is going to change that. In
Yeah.
any case, the strategy of monitoring, cloning, and scaling is their way to find their winner chicken dinner. But there's something way deeper at play here. Just when you think cloning is their only ace, they've got another card up their sleeve. Buying out foreign firms. Sure, that's not something specific to
Well, yeah. You know what's the best about that? It's the fact that everyone's just buying the USA out. And, I mean, how much China has bought farmland in USA and how much of that farmland is near, targets of espionage? That's crazy. That's so crazy.
China, but there's a catch here. Foreign game studios have to work with Chinese firms to sell their games in China, which
Yep.
means they have to share their profits. And not many foreign companies want to do that, which means less competition and more
Whoa. This is completely incorrect. This is... How can you make a mistake? Yo, that is completely, without question, 100% incorrect. Every company wants to compete in China. There is no such thing as a company that does not want to compete in China, because in China you have knockoff brands and everyone knows it's a knockoff brand. If you get into the Chinese market, considering how dense it is, you are gonna make a lot of money just because of that density. And furthermore, when an actual outsider product comes into China and it is quality, it's something new, that's even more money. Every company wants to work in China because, or at least, at the bare minimum, sell in China. Because that is just the gold fund. That is a gold rush.
money for China. And with more money, they can easily buy more foreign studios for some very hefty sums. And with this advantage of being a closed market, the Communist Party is aggressively buying out Western industries. Maybe while Hollywood spread its American values through movies, perhaps it's now China's turn to do the very same, but through games. In a communist state like China, this means everything, including games, is controlled by the state. So while the West tries to ban TikTok, it should perhaps also look behind the scenes of Western game studios that also provide access to millions of personal data points. And so long gone are the days when you could just pop a
The hell is with that music here? It's cutting off. It's strange.
cartridge into a keyboard jackie and stay somewhat untraceable. However,
Right.
this all isn't without its challenges. In China, the gaming community is growing tired of it all, especially of the game of clones. When the legend of Never
Yeah. Again, literally as I told you, this is why everything tries to get into China. Because these knockoffs are obviously worse than the original. You can't try to clone something, make it slightly different and not a one-for-one copy, and have it be as good. People want the original. People in China obviously know that these are clones. They're not idiots. They may lack a surprisingly huge amount of morals in general, but they are not idiots. They know it's a clone. They know there's the real thing, and they want the real thing. Again, everyone wants to sell in China at the bare minimum. Well, that's technically what I would describe as work in China, but you know, whatever.
Land came out, a blatant clone of Genshin Impact, gamers were not impressed and criticism was fierce. And when Plague Inc. was taken down the App Store, because you know why, a Russian clone appeared, which also faced huge backlash from Chinese gamers who mistook it as yet another copycat move. And so the winner-winner chicken strategy might not be cutting it much longer.
I mean, it's gonna cut it anyway. It doesn't matter if it's a clone as long as it's fun enough, people are gonna play. Obviously, people don't like copies, but, you know, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Anyway, great video, except for the part that she says, you know, that people don't want to, game companies do not want to work in China. Bruh, gaming companies one by one want to go into China as much as possible. They sometimes just don't because of the extreme rules and regulations, and well, there are situations where even the US themselves, for example, interfere that you cannot sell your stuff in China. Anyway, that's our girl, Belinda Erkan. Mommy. Anyway, have a nice day. Bye-bye.